It is my pleasure to welcome Manjula Sriram. I know Manjula for a few years. She's a CIO at the Joint Chiropractic. It's a nationwide network of chiropractors delivering quality, affordable chiropractic benefits and healing to families. She's previously served as Director of Customer Implementation and Support at many different organizations, and she holds an MBA. We also have Scott Drake. I know Scott for a while. He's the CTO at SymTrain. He's a technology strategy leader responsible for SymTrain's product and technology teams, focused on making SymTrain ready for the future across all services and products. Scott has over 25 years of technology and software development practice, most recently as SVP and CIO of a CNBC, responsible for all real-time on-air applications and analytics. Previously, Scott was the CTO for CNBC, responsible for building a technology organization for the site as well. So we have an excellent panel. With that, I'm going to turn this over to Manjula to give us a brief overview of Joint Corporation. Manjula, over to you.
Thank you, Raj, and thank you for the next slide here. Good morning, everyone. It's an honor and pleasure to be on this panel and represent the company like the Joint Chiropractic. We are making affordable chiropractic care accessible to everyone. That's the core business that we are in. Obviously, being a publicly traded company, I have to present the safe harbor statement. I'm not going to go through reading this, but it's available for everyone. So we have been serving patients seeking pain relief since 1999. And as many of you are probably aware, there is a lot of opioid type of scenarios that are existing, and we focus on wellness and ongoing health care without the use of opioids. Next slide, please. We are a no insurance model, making ourselves available in most cases 7 days a week at a convenient location for most. You're going to see us in a retail shopping area, near an outlet mall, and so on and so forth. So a typical visit does not take more than 5 minutes. So you can be picking up lunch or grocery shopping and get adjusted and feel better and move on with your day. As you can see, we are a very disruptive business model. And in 2020, we served 584,000 unique patients, new patients, 8.3 million adjustments, even the year of pandemic. 1.1 unique patients came through our clinic. And 27 of these were new to chiropractic. So this also, for all the technology folks, shows that it's a huge data footprint. And as we go through the rest of the panel discussion, you'll see why that's extremely important. Not only are we in a retail setting, right? We're also an essential healthcare. Therefore, when we had COVID, where all the non-essential care was shut down, we functioned and we were continuing to provide and service our patients who did not want to go to the hospital with the fear of being exposed to the pandemic. Next slide, please. This is, I think, one of the most interesting slides that we have, which is, we are a mix of corporate and franchise model, where we, in a sense, when it's a franchise model, are licensing independent businesses to utilize our brand and provide guidance to service our patients. We've got a total of 592 clinics as of Q1 in 33 states. As of April 1, we actually hit 600 clinics. Unique technology is a challenge, right? What unique members, publicly traded company, patient service, that's what our business model is from a uniqueness perspective. And that's pretty much the Joint in a nutshell. Our website is thejointchiropractic.com. Do go and check it out. And if you'd like to try out our services, go check out one of the clinics.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to give you our testing journey. So when Raj called me, I kind of signed up right away. I appreciate you're inviting me today. So my name is Scott Drake. I'm CTO of SymTrain. And SymTrain's a SaaS platform that helps companies accelerate their employee development by automating all the activities that go into role play and coaching. So you can think of it more like a HubSpot and how they've automated a lot of the marketing activities and efforts for companies. That is what SymTrain is going to do for employee development to get employees job ready, right? So if you look at the real problem, corporations have employee development backwards. People retain about 90% of what they do, but only 20% of what they hear, right? People learn by doing, but today, less than 10% of corporate training is focused on learn by doing. So employees have to learn on the fly or learn on their own or figure it out themselves, right? Or worse, learn on customers, right? And we just don't think that's right. And SymTrain is here to solve that problem by automating these manual efforts. Could you go to the next slide, Raj? Our platform, you have a new hire, they come into the job as early as the first day, and they're able to apply knowledge and be able to practice actual job scenarios and get feedback on how well they're doing right off the bat the first day. And the feedback is consistent across everyone, so that helps, right? And the environment's self-paced. So it takes a lot of anxiety out of the employees because it's self-paced. They can take as many repetitions as they want to build their own confidence level, right? And we know we need confident employees that are competent to compete in this marketplace. And I would say the best part is for company side of this is they're saving so much money by automating this, right? They're cutting training resources. The time for them is down by half, right? And they accelerate the time to get their employees job ready, right? And people, most important, people aren't learning on customers anymore, right? So we think this is a huge, huge benefit. So I thought I would just go to the next slide and show you a little bit, not do a demo, but show you how the application works a bit, right? So here, we can take Jenna, for example, right? She's going to engage in authentic conversation with SymTrain. And while she's doing that, she's getting the repetitions in an automated environment to practice a real world scenario. But while that's happening, SymTrain is listening to her, right? SymTrain is analyzing her voice for keywords and sentiment and giving her feedback to Jenna on her sentiment and keywords and on her delivery and what she can improve and get better on. And what's not shown, I couldn't show the whole application on here, but we also have the ability to add video, graphics, and system software. So as Jenna practices navigating through the software, she can engage with the client and the customer, as well as give feedback and how well she's doing. So we're really excited about this opportunity and our product going forward. So I think that just gives you a quick kind of grasp of SymTrain and our application.
Thank you, Scott. So let us, now that you have laid a groundwork of what each of these very interesting and unique businesses are, let us talk about some of your business goals for 2021 and 2022, and what are some of the growth and goals for you, and how is your software supporting those? Maybe we should start with Manjula. Maybe you can give us a little brief about that, and then we can switch to Scott. Manjula?
Absolutely, thanks, Raj. So if anyone has looked at our website or any of that information, our business goal, just at the onset, is we want to get to 1,000 clinics by the end of year 2023. We are at 600. We have 400 to go. Quite a big, lofty goal for us that we think we can achieve. Based on all the market analysis and everything we've done, we have an opportunity to have 1,800 plus clinics based on everything set up in terms of what our geographics, our demographics are. So we can come to about 1,800 clinics, if not more, and then continue to revolutionize chiropractic care. So that's our business goal. How do we go about it? So what does that translate from a technology goal perspective is we need to have scalable software in clinics, right? Which is secure info. Again, the uniqueness of our business is we have to be SOX compliant because of the 404A or B publicly traded organization. Because we are in healthcare and essential healthcare, we have to be HIPAA compliant. And finally, because we do take transactions and financial transactions, we have to be PCI compliant. So you name it, we have to be compliant in that world. So it actually poses a very, very unique challenge, right? Because of all of these pieces. We also need a rapid application development. Because we want to revolutionize chiropractic care, rapid application development becomes extremely critical for us. And as we go through this, you're going to see why. Most of the changes are happening. We want to add new policies, we want to add new products, we want to test out new ways of serving our customers or providing them with marketing pieces or drip campaigning, etc. Those are some of the pieces that are extremely critical for us to be able to grow. The next unique piece is the large amount of data. If you notice how many adjustments we gave and how many purchases we had, we're growing at about 21 to 22% CAGR year over year in our data footprint. Now, that's huge. So security becomes very critical. With the large amount of data, anytime we do software development, our business objective is to make sure that our data does not get corrupt. And we have an expectation that our systems are available 24/7 by 365 with over 99.9% availability. That's extremely critical when you're trying to service patients. You need to be able to look at the system. You need to be able to look at what was done the last time. The unique footprint allows a patient in one clinic to go to any clinic across the network. So you may not see the same doctor again. So the doctor has to depend on the system being available to look at what happened the last time, especially because chiropractic care means adjusting your body to gain that balance. There might be some areas where you don't want them to be adjusted. You may have had fused your vertebrae or any of those pieces. So 24/7 by 365 becomes extremely critical. How are we trying to solve it? And we're going to go through that in more detail, is to implement a brand new platform. Currently, we had a homegrown system, which is very antiquated, which was developed with a server under somebody's desk, to a system that we are partnering with an enterprise organization like Sugar CRM. So that's our business objective, and a few challenges.
Thank you, Manjula. Scott, let's ask the same question to you. What are some of your business objective goals for 2021?
Revenue-wise, as a startup, right, we want to double our revenues and increase our ARPU, which is our average revenue per user, by 2021, right? And then speed to market. We have we want to accelerate our product roadmap. We have an aggressive product roadmap, and I'll just give you some things on the roadmap so you get a kind of a taste of what we're trying to build. But automated authoring, right? So the ability to take video and auto recordings and automatically make simulations out of that so you can train better, right? So the idea is to take kind of that information and generate training out of it. And then data-driven training we want to do, right? So we can determine the better needs of employees that way. We can automatically tailor training and simulations to their needs that way, right? To kind of get it more personalized, the training that way. And then third is a SaaS model. Today, we do more enterprise. We have some big enterprise clients, and it works really well. But we also want a self-serve model, right? Where somebody can just get a credit card, swipe in, and start, creating sims and doing training that way. So that's another big kind of initiative. And then the idea is that we're, just like you talked about, Raj, a bit, like there's common enterprise software that everybody uses, right?
Yes.
So can we have general training simulations that we can reuse? So if somebody created a simulation of how to use Google Analytics or how to use Salesforce or how to use HubSpot, right? Can we put that in a general marketplace and have an exchange, right? Almost the idea of this content exchange where I can automatically load and see different training sessions, like seminars or simulations tailored to those needs that way. So that's kind of the fourth one. And then we've built the technology where we've kind of pieced together audio as a timeline, and we've embedded other I would say data artifacts and other like graphics on a timeline. But we're looking at new delivery methods, whether that be video or augmented reality, to make it more authentic. Our business is all about authentic, right? Training that way to make it really people feel comfortable kind of interacting that way, and the more authentic we can make it, the better off we're going to be, right? And then last, I just put in this, like, us is always kind of look at continuous improvement, right? Increase our code quality, right? Our speed, our scalability, first time right, and increase our mean time between failures. So I just picked a couple things that way, but those are kind of our business goals and product goals, I would say, in the coming year.
Thank you, Scott. So with those ambitious goals, I'm sure your software factory is cranking at full speed. What are some of the testing challenges that you're facing today?
Yeah, thanks, Raj. So as a startup, we don't have infinite amount of resources, right? So we have to be, we have limited amount of tech resources, right? So we need to work smarter, right? Our resources need to definitely work smarter, right? So, and then also, I would say this year we spent most of the time with our enterprise clients. We have about 10 or 15 enterprise clients on really kind of product market fit. They've renewed our product, but we've gotten a lot of kind of design thinking and iterative interviewing and feedback, right? So faster, quicker release cycles are really needed for us as a startup, right? So that's really critical for us in the kind of testing model. And then, like we went over, we're a non-traditional application, right? We have a complex kind of software and application stack with conversational AI software within there, right? Not just on speech to text, but also looking at different emotional scoring. Am I confident? I have the right energy, right? Different kinds of AI software to help with that kind of training expertise that way, right? And so a lot of challenges around that are not in traditional applications. And then for us, I've run big development shops, and we've had the opportunity to have maintain big automation platforms. But the total cost of ownership for us, when we looked around for this company, we couldn't find anything. It was too expensive or too many entry barriers. You had to have specific skills, and we really like this no code, low code ability, where we don't care where a tester is, from a customer success manager to a developer, right? When we want to have an environment that's conducive to that, and still, with all this, I would say, authentic conversation, there's still a lot of manual testing we have to do, right? We have to validate accuracy of transcripts coming back as we do speech to text, right? The quality of some of our emotional scoring, right? And so we have to leave enough time to manually test these things, right? So we needed something that was really going to help us kind of free up time that way. So I think those are probably 4 or 5 of the biggest challenges we had on the testing side.
How about you, Manjula?
You got several, no different than what Scott's sharing, but while we are a publicly traded company, we are also an organization that's not a development shop, right? We are in a service industry. While technology is a component of it, it is not the component of it. We are in the business of providing chiropractic care. So with that, I have to make the best use of the resources that I have in the different areas. Our major challenges, immense amount of data. And, we are moving from a homegrown system that people love. While it has its challenges, while it has all its problems, people have been using it for a while. So, to an industry solution, that itself provides a challenge because it doesn't allow a lot of customization. And because of this challenge that we're going from a homegrown customized product to an industry-wide software, the big question that comes is, how can I compensate their love for this homegrown tool to this towards this enterprise software, is by making sure it's as error-free as we can give them, at least the appearance. So we have to, as a tech team, provide the system with a view of no defects, right? So if there are defects, they should not be able to see it. We have to also face compliance, right? So when we first developed our homegrown software, we developed it, like I said, under somebody's desk. It was developed with, prior to us going public, prior to us being under the eyes of SOX and PCI and HIPAA compliance. So we have to keep that in mind and make sure that we can evidence the testing, we can evidence whatever's being done. And again, manual testing, right? If I have a small team, regardless of how large my team grows, they can look at one test case one time, one test case 2 times maybe. But again, you have to find the data, you have to find the method of being able to test. And I can't test on the magnitude or the scale that I need to test to ensure that the system is going to work right and is going to work correctly. So that's the key piece. I actually was looking to hire a very large QA team, and but then I have to think smart to say, I can't have such a large QA team because how am I going to sustain that after we launch? So those are some of our challenges.
Thank you. So how did Sauce Labs Autonomic solution help you guys? Maybe we can start with Manjula. We'll stay with Manjula, and then we go switch to Scott. Manjula, when did you learn about Autonomic, and how did it help you?
And so we were in the middle of finishing up our first round of development, because we did a lot of start and stop, mainly because of the pandemic that came into the middle. But we were very skeptical. Actually, we stepped in with the Autonomic, met with Autonomic with a lot of skepticism. But our vendor partner actually introduced us to you guys. And it's not, you hear of Selenium and all of those who have the market share, but we didn't have the money to get something like a Selenium. But we said, okay, let's meet with you. And when Autonomic actually did a demo for us and a proof of concept, that actually was something that we were quite intrigued by. The key thing is anybody who doesn't have technology background even could walk through and do the steps that they have to do manually, and the scripts can be built, and then I can replace the amount of data I want to test with. I think that was the key piece of it. We were able to automate our full regression suite, which actually took us about 60 to 80 hours, 3 people. Down, significantly, right? So the whole regression suite, while we still have some manual steps, my team can now focus on that side of it, right? So today, we have 250 plus scripts. Each script has anywhere from 37 to 60 steps in it. So just imagine that when you blow it out, and you're trying to do each of these 250 steps with 60 plus steps in each of these scripts manually. You have to repeat yourself repeatedly. We were able to gain economies of scale because some of these tests are repetitive. You have to get to a certain point to divert. It took us about 4, maybe 5 weeks for 1 FTE to develop it. So that shows the simplicity of it. Again, we do have a rock star in our test developer. Even if it takes a little bit more time, I think it's still nowhere near the 3 weeks or 4 weeks you're taking for the 3 FTEs. In the worst case scenario, it's probably 1 cycle of your regression. And when you're building a platform level types of systems, you're going to go through that regression every single time you're trying to do a release. It gives us about 80 to 85% coverage. From our basic scenarios and everything that we can test. We were able to actually utilize SOX to do role-based testing, Autonomic for role-based testing that we could share with our SOX internal auditors. And I think that's huge for us to be able to share. Again, we do have manual testing, and they are, it takes about 7 hours on top of that, but nowhere near 3 weeks. So I can actually go through, and again, this is a brand new platform. We haven't deployed it into production yet. And we've gone through several cycles with 21% data growth year over year. Just keep those pieces in mind. I can get through an Autonomic test overnight in about 7 hours, the 250 test cases with 67 some steps each, plus the 7 hours of 2 people. I'm nowhere near the 16 people that I was trying to hire. So I can grow organically for my organization. So I think that is one of the key pieces.
Awesome. Thank you, Manjula. Scott, what about you?
So we had a similar journey. We were a little, as Manjula, we were a little bit skeptical. I think one of our advisors gave me you guys as a lead that way for our company. And one of the big challenges we had was we were very audio specific, our application, right? And when we first got the application, maybe it wasn't conducive, but we worked with your development team. We were able to do like a pilot very quickly, and we were able to prove out our simulations, which we've had challenges with other software. And being a startup, that was a critical piece for us. But from our point of view, we were able, hard benefit wise, we think we have over 40,000 of savings. It doesn't sound like a lot, but for a startup, that's a substantial part of our QA budget, right? So a good part. So the hard savings. And then I think one of the things that really is of value for us is the coverage we get. Okay. So we have a lot of content generation by top companies like Citi, Allstate, Travelers. We have, Cox. We have a lot of these companies, and they create their own simulations. Now we can create tests or suites that can be specific to those customers, right? So when we deploy software, I can be with assurance when our customer success manager talks to one of our clients, like, hey, not only do we test our software for a new release, right? We've tested your content specifically, right? And that's got a big value for us in the marketplace for sure, right? So, and then I would say the other thing is really the sprint velocity, because we don't have to spend as much time on manual testing. Our velocity in kind of story point throughput from an agile point of view, up 30 to 40% that way, right? So because the team can really rely on those tests and kind of focus on more manual efforts that way. And then our code quality, knock on wood, but we've been using the product for about 4 or 5 months. We have not had a rollback in production software deployment yet, right? So part of our CI/CD pipeline is to put these suites in there, like I mentioned. And so part of deployment is not just moving the code over and having UAT, but we do these suites too to make sure they all pass that way, right? So that's been a big help. And then I think our first time right metrics are much higher, right? Since our testers can be more focused on detailed test cases, right? They have the confidence they can rely on the automated tests, right? So they focus more deeper on these stories right ahead of time, right? So it's been very helpful for us. I would say those are probably the main points. I would say also, the people that picked up this software probably a week or less than a week, that there were, we had some onboarding with the pilot, but after the pilot, we had a person or two, headcount and a half, kind of pick up on it, probably a week's time, and they were kind of productive in the system, which were really beneficial for us. So that's kind of some of the journey that we went through that's helped us with Autonomic that way. Very positive results.
Thank you, Scott. Actually, I could be talking to you, both of you, for the whole day. But since we're going to be short on time, because we have such great stories and interesting businesses to talk about, what I would really, it would be a good thing for you guys to share some of pearls of wisdom, so to speak, to the audience, right? What would be, it could be on anything, right? It could be on anything. So one or two things you guys can share. Let us stay with Scott. Scott, what would you like to share with the audience? Your recommendations from your years of experiences being a CTO.
Yeah, so one of the opportunities I had being GE, well, we were owned by GE at one time, is I'm a Six Sigma black belt. So continuous improvement is a core thing for us, right? So we really view kind of investing in test automation, right, for long-term ROI, right? So maybe you're not going to see it right off the bat. Maybe you see some tactical things with sprints and some increases there, but we really kind of think the tide rises all ships that way, right? And that investing in kind of the automation is a continuous improvement activity, and it's critical kind of a long-term success in a product technology organization. And then this is our theme as a company. We see that automate everywhere, right? Anywhere you can automate, you should be automating, right? And so whether that's testing, DevOps, deployments, right? That's kind of the theme around there. That's the advice I would give you. If you have opportunity, sometimes you get just bogged down. You got to get releases done, new features done, but you got to take technical debt yourself and make sure you automate some of that technical debt that way to make sure you free up capacity going forward. And then I would say one of the things we learned, but maybe I could have shared with it kind of how Autonomic helped us, is that we have on every tier, we have suites and and use an autonomic automated testing. So in the past, we focused, with traditional 4-tier SDLC environment, right? We have development, QA stage, and then production, right? And I would say a lot of our testing, while they tested dev to QA, maybe a little bit, but QA to stage, a lot more intense testing, and then obviously stage to prod. But now we have this automation. We actually give it to developers, right? So they're in local environments, they're running, instead of doing their unit tests, they can run this now, right? And we're just finding the code quality much, much better, right? And we're not making the responsibility, testing's not a responsibility of just QA. It's everybody, right? UAT, product, right? And so we have that theme going there. And I would say that's an important concept going forward, right? And then, you want to enable your product tech teams, right? They have a lot of opportunities, right? To be on a lot of different companies and technologies. You want them to be focused on added value activities, right? Not on the repeatable mundane things, right? So the more you can automate and create automated testing, right? They can focus on more value added activities. So that's just a couple things that I think would be helpful to take away for, for the people that are joining the panel today.
And Scott, one of the things you mentioned is you're giving these suites that you're building, whether they're smoke test suites or regression test suites, to the developers to run after they make any change. Actually, isn't that the best example of shift left? As soon as you make it, right? I mean, you're living it, and we should probably talk about that one topic on a separate webinar all by itself.
No, but I think that the big thing, if I give any advice, is culturally, that's what testing's not just, it's the whole product technology organization, or even the whole company. Right. Our CEO goes into our product, and so you have to make sure that culture is there, right? It's not, oh, that's that person's job, right? That it's got to be a collective kind of responsibility.
Exactly.
Yep.
Thank you, Scott. So Manjula, what would be some of the pearls of wisdom you can share with the audience?
We could have a topic right on that, right? But the reality is, I think one of the key things is the more you test, the better credibility you have, especially when you're working with your clients. So, I think Scott said, look for the long-term ROI. I completely agree with that. However, your immediate ROI is the credibility you're building with your customers. I think that you can't put financial value to it. We used, when I first came to this organization, there were things that people would make changes in production and the production system would just suddenly go down. We've been able to stop many of those pieces as we go through this. I think the key piece is QA is not an afterthought. I think I want everyone to think about it, that quality assurance is not an afterthought. Think about quality right at the get-go, right? Work with your development team and so on to build these test suites, right? If I was to redo the project that I'm in, that we're very close to deploying, I think one of the key things I would do is I would mandate my vendor to use the test scripts that we have. And I think Scott alluded to that, is while Autonomic came in and helped us, I really wish we had brought Autonomic in a little bit earlier than we did. We were a little bit into the project when we brought you guys on. I think the churn that you have going back and forth, identifying the issues and so on, reduces if you can actually develop the test scripts and provide it to your vendor and say, what, before you give me this product every time, you need to run this suite of tests. The other piece is make Autonomic or any, hopefully it's Autonomic, part of your project planning efforts when you're trying to estimate the project. It actually is not heavily expensive when you do that at the beginning than to come in the middle, because now you have to take the layers of work that you have done. Again, start early, start clean, start at the beginning. The other piece of advice that I would give is definitely also work with your business teams. Again, shift left phenomenon, right? Work with your business teams to gain their user acceptance testing. So now you took your quality assurance testing, gave it to the developers, and they can run that suite before you get it. You take the user acceptance testing and put that into your automation suite and actually run through that testing. Now you're taking that churn back from the business away. Those are some of the things that I definitely have learned from it as well. And again, we would have ongoing, we will be implementing those. We're not a development organization. So, a key thing is to plan and use a tool like Autonomic that helps you from that end, because you don't have to be extremely technical. You can be data focused, and then actually truly spend the time that you need on the manual testing. Our manual testing efforts are things like we pull up data in our current system, we pull up data in our new system and make sure they match. It's, and we take screenshots of that. But rest of the automation testing is handled through Autonomic. So I think that's the key piece, is to plan early, plan in advance, and make sure you're committed to it, because otherwise your test suite is only as good as the amount of continuous improvement and effort you put into it.
We do have some questions coming in here. So to kick us off, I've got one sort of broader on the QA front, and welcome Manjula or Scott to take this. We have an attendee asking, what are the prerequisites or the checklist that needs to be followed from a QA team's perspective before moving to test automation, before making that initial shift?
I can take that, and Scott, if you can add. The way I look at QA is, it's always process, people, and technology, right? You need to have people who can understand the process. Without understanding the process that you're going to apply, you can't automate it. So my recommendation is to make sure you actually go through the manual effort of testing once, and document it or record the automation on that, and so that everybody understands the process. Autonomic is a very easy tool to pick up and go. You can pick it up in a few hours. Just if you want to use the UI, take maybe a couple of days to write scripts around it, but definitely. So go through that process of understanding what your process is, to be able to apply the technology and make sure the technology works for your benefit.
Yeah, I agree with it 100%. I think the only other added value we do is we are a big Jira shop, right? So we mandate in our stories those screens and those from the product folks, that those screens are there and the QA folks can show that click path or that video of what needs to be done. And so once you have that and understand the tool, they can translate that very easily that way. So we have a little bit of an extra step, that there's a little bit of extra work in the story side to make sure that those click streams or those videos are well understood by our QA and testing team.
Great, thank you both. We've got a few people here who are interested in mobile testing. Raj, this might be a question for you. Welcome.
Sure.
Input from anyone.
Sure.
Asking here, does Autonomic work for mobile native apps for Android and iOS? Does it support mobile applications?
Yes, so good question. So today, Autonomic supports all web cloud SaaS applications. And there is a question right there about React. Yeah, we do React, Angular, iframes. We do all of those technologies. We also do mobile web testing. That's something we already do. The native iOS and native Android apps are a popular demand. It is on our roadmap and it will be here shortly. But as of right this second, we don't do native apps. But other than native apps, we do all web API and mobile web testing and cloud applications and so on. Yes.
Great, thank you, Raj. Lots of interest in mobile, certainly. Good to get that input. Back to Scott and Manjula. There's a question that came in asking about maintenance, right? And your use of Autonomic, wondering how has implementing that tool perhaps reduced the maintenance effort for your team, for your testing?
I mean, for us, we used to have our own testing suite that we have to maintain and keep the infrastructure. Since it's a cloud-based product, right? We can run these scripts and it's we don't have to manage any of the environment, right? So for us, it's just making sure the scripts are correct, right, and accurate. and then we run that over in different environment. We love that because we can run multiple suites simultaneously versus us managing that architecture, whether it's in the cloud for us or not. We like that kind of arm's distance to be able to do that.
Yeah, on our end, I will talk from like at the get-go. So ours is a brand new platform, and we've been going through quite a bit of churn as we're developing to add to the Autonomic suite. Every time we've tried to change or update functionality, it's probably maybe an hour or so maintenance. That we can add additional test cases to the system. That's about it. So I think we are seeing so much churn right now, and we anticipate it might be just additional couple of hours every time we do a big release to take into account the new release features. Outside of that, the regression suite should be pretty standard.
Yeah, I was answering more like a total cost of ownership that way, but yeah, on our release, there, for us, we with that increased time to do those kind of the customer suites that we talked about has been a big benefit for us. Yeah.
Let me add one thought here. So Scott and Manjula covered pretty much the entire spectrum of maintenance. Maintenance happens whenever there's a change. And there is one other point I would like to add, which is when change happens, like Manjula said, there will be new test cases you need to create. So that is one sort of change. But then the other sort of change could be object properties got shifted. So XPaths and CSS selectors changed. That also is a maintenance somebody has to do if you're doing traditional approaches. Somebody has to go find the object that is changed and then fix the code to reflect that change. You don't have to do that with Autonomic. Once Autonomic generates the scripts, it will automatically heal those scripts as the change happens. Meaning, as the object properties change, we shift with it. So XPaths and CSS selectors are always running. So that means there is no brittle scripts. You don't have to deal with the brittle scripts. So that is another subtle point I would like to make just to complement what Manjula and Scott said.
Great, thank you all for that. A couple of questions I'm seeing in terms of sort of getting started with the tool, getting your teams up to speed. I know Manjula, Scott, you've both implemented this in the past few years. Just thinking about the level of training, onboarding that was necessary. And specifically, I'm looking at a question here. Someone is saying they have a solution for iOS and Android for Appium C# with BDD. Wondering if the Autonomic solution can be integrated with ease, and just what are some of the challenges that people have faced in that integration and getting started?
Well, this is kind of a little bit more detailed conversation. We would love to, have maybe a separate call with you to discuss this, where we can talk about how we can integrate other technologies or capabilities and execute the entirety of end-to-end tests. We have done that in the past, and we would love to have a separate conversation on how that integration happens and how those tests can be called and so on. Now, I also saw a question here, which was an easy question I felt, was can you use this for Salesforce testing? Absolutely. Today, many of our customers are using it for Salesforce testing. In fact, Manjula, who is on the panel, uses this for an application which is very similar to Salesforce called Sugar CRM. So the Sugar CRM is also a SaaS cloud application for CRM purposes. And Manjula, the entire effort is to test this type of an app. So just to summarize it for everybody in the audience, we do Salesforce testing, we do Oracle application testing, custom application testing, and other apps like Sugar CRM and so on. So we do all of those test automation today using Autonomic.
You can click on a screen, you can automate it. Basically, this is how I would present it.
Exactly.
Yeah, we look at mobile web like that. We really don't have an app layer because we're trying to replicate a lot of voice. So we do a lot of like iMessage kind of format, but it is mobile web. We haven't done kind of the app layer yet, so we haven't encountered that.
Great. I do also want to get back to the earlier part of this question around training, onboarding, getting a team up and running, and just hear your thoughts briefly, Scott and Manjula, on what your experience was with that.
So I think the best thing is the pilot structure, right? So if you could define a pilot, that's what we did, right? And so whether it's a couple of weeks or a month that way, and really get success criteria defined there and try it out, right? And get exposure to it before you do a big commit. That's what we did, and we were able to prove it out. And by the time the pilot was over, our QA team was pretty competent in building scripts on the platform. So my approach would be, kind of tests before you actually, commit. And if you could do a pilot that way and really get a success criteria that's going to help you within your development needs, I would make the suggestion to do that first.
Yeah, I think to add a little bit to that, when we first started working with Autonomic, Autonomic actually said, we'll do some training for you guys. Our Autonomic developer found YouTube videos and learned. By the time the training, she already had started building scripts through in the proof of concept, and the training actually ended up being a much more almost advanced level 2, level 3 type of training for her, and this was only about a week into the implementation cycle of it. So it's a very quick, Autonomic is a recording tool, if you want to look at it. So if I click on screens, it generates the scripts in the background. So if you know how to use your application, you can record it, and it automatically builds your scripts from there, which is why I said know to do your process of testing, and it'll automatically build. The other piece is our system is extremely complex, mainly because our application does point of sale, our application does electronic medical records, and we also use the same tool for reporting to be able to provide some revenue information for our accounting team. So it's an all-in-one type of a system and manages the patient flow in the clinics. So extremely complex. And if you think about your backbone and all the vertebrae, we've had to test all the different vertebrae. So the scripts were very quick for us to build.
Another question here asking about how you handle multiple record sets. How is it that the tests can run successfully when data is changing dynamically? Certainly, Manjula, you were talking about complexity. This is certainly part of what everyone is dealing with. Do you have examples of what that looks like on your end, or Raj, do you want to speak from the side of the tool?
I can take that, and Manjula and Scott can add their thoughts. So what we have done is we understand that this is a problem for all enterprises. So we have separated data from the test case. I will do the demo in the next segment so you can see the product and how it works and so on. The data separation gives us a lot of flexibility. So when you express your test intent, like Manjula said in simple English, you are navigating through. We are actually, every data you enter or every data you want to enter, we maintain that in a separate Excel. And that Excel could have multiple records. So it doesn't, instead of having just one row, you can have any number of rows in that Excel. Or if you prefer an API call to fetch the data, we can do that. And when the data is needed for execution, it's called runtime. That is when we bind the data with the test step. So that is when the test step knows how to fetch that data and then populate it. And if you want to run, let's say if you have 100 records you need to populate, we have a looping construct. So you could loop through 100 times and populate the data. So also for those folks, like in the case of Manjula, if you want to comply with HIPAA compliance, you want to generate synthetic data, we have some synthetic data capabilities built into the product. which I'm going to demonstrate shortly. So those are some of the ways we can handle complex data scenarios. And over to you, Manjula and Scott.
Yeah, I think you pretty much covered it all very well. And the piece that I will say is, from a compliance perspective, we can record some of these pieces, right? We can actually, every autonomic test is recorded, and we keep that stored so that we can go back and say what were the results on such and such date. We use the Excel format. We like I said, test 300 some test cases every night, 67 plus steps each. So there's a lot of data we go through, but we create the data, and the construct of the data, whether it's a legacy data or new data, we create it. And then we take about 25 or so patients and manually go through that testing.
Yeah, I think we have similar, like, different persona login, right? We have a creator, we have a trainee, we have a manager. And so we were able to kind of leverage those different credentials that way, but use the same kind of test script. And I think the other thing, I don't know if you're going to go over flows a bit, that's helped us too, with using flows and having less redundancy that way, and kind of putting a more module approach. So I think those two things have helped us a great deal.
Right. Thank you for bringing that, Scott. So flows is a concept where you can create a high degree of reuse. Essentially, think of your tests. Let's say that you're testing a Salesforce-like application, creating a lead, converting a lead, creating an opportunity, creating a customer, creating an account, creating a contact. All of these are reusable components. So one person, even logging in, logging out. So these functions, we call them flows, can be created once by somebody on your team in English. And once that is created, everybody else can just refer to that flow, and you will be able to use it and execute it, right? So this is a faster way and a quicker way to build your test assets rather than doing it by hand every single time. So that is a capability that's built into the product.
Okay. Manjula, we had a follow-up question here in reference to what you were talking about with your company following compliance policies, and wondering how Autonomic supports compliance testing. Could you talk a little more about that?
Yes, absolutely. So a lot of the places where we're using the tool is role-based testing, right? So one of the key things is when you are in a healthcare type of a setting, I cannot have a non-doctor be able to access the doctor information and patient information. So we go through and we have test cases that actually just test access type of things for different roles. And we record each of those and we share that with our folks. So that's one level of testing. The other is, one of the things we have to look at is to say from an accuracy perspective, right? If we have a concept of visits. Every time you come and see the doctor, you have a visit. So if I saw the doctor 5 times, I need to make sure that I have 5 visits, and based on whatever package I have, maybe I bought a 6-pack, I only have 1 visit left. So that shows that accurately that my 5 visits were deducted accurately and only 1 visit is remaining now. And when you do that piece of it, it's more from a recording perspective that shows the accuracy and completeness. Now, from a SOX perspective, have to have at least 25, 30 scenarios that I'm doing this test repeatedly. So every test track we do, we run about 25 of these cases and show that that's what our system is doing. So that's how I've been using. It only helps when we are providing the evidence to our auditors that this is how we did it. They just have to make sure that our testing suite is accurate and complete, that we're getting that, or whatever percentage we say that it covers that percentage, and then we can use this piece. So I just have to prove it once, and I can use this every single time and show that I'm complying. So rather than when I do manual testing, it's every time I have to prove and gather that info and show it. But in this scenario, I just prove it once. It's a test of one.
Wonderful. Yeah, definitely sounds like it's simplifying things for you. That's really good to hear. Question here, maybe I'll turn this to you first, Scott, in your experience with your team. We have someone asking how quickly a non-technical person can learn Autonomic. And do you have, Scott, experience from your team's implementation of how quickly folks came up to speed?
Yeah, so we had, when we talked about our journey a little bit, we had our QA team do the first pilot, but after that, we hired 2 or 3 interns, right? So a couple of those were math majors, no coding experience, maybe some Python skills, but very minimum software skills. And they were able to we had trained the trainer, our lead QA person understood how to do the scripting. And probably, within a week or so, we had 2 or 3 interns being able to be proficient in creating scripts. So I would say the barrier is pretty low that way. And we've kind of proved it out with people that are kind of I would say, no code or low code experience that way, working in the environment.
You. Lots of questions here. We'll, to everyone listening, watching right now, we'll continue to come back to your questions throughout the event. I know we just have a few minutes left with this particular panel. And I do want to come back to some sort of bigger picture advice for our audience from both of you. I know we have a lot of folks on the call with us today who are not yet at the level of decision-making authority that the 2 of you are, Manjula and Scott. And just wondering what advice you might have for individuals who are trying to implement something new, trying to convince their leadership to implement a new tool or a new testing strategy. What works when people come to you on your teams?
So for me, I'm very data driven, right? So if they can show me, quantitatively the value, whether it's kind of the time it takes and the reduction of time or the increased coverage with the same amount of effort, right? So if you could kind of scope it where you could show the value proposition with quantitative value, I think that's a really important key. And maybe you don't have to do everything, right? You could do a small piece and just show, right? But I think data is kind of the key deliverer for value for a lot of, I would say, technical leadership that way, and showing that the value through data is probably one of the important things that I kind of latch onto and kind of investigate further.
I think in addition to the data, obviously data is the key. You want to look at it, if you notice, both Scott and I we presented it from data. I looked at it from an FTE perspective that, hey, it saved me from hiring 14 to 16 people. I kept only 3, right there. If you average out the salaries and the benefits and all of that, you can show the ROI financially right there. From a time is the other piece. I said, it took us for 3 FTEs, 3 weeks. So that's 120 hours per person, roughly, down to 7 hours a night plus 7 hours of manual testing. That's a significant difference. And that's what I would do. And you don't have to do the entire suite for POC. You just need to do one, and you can extrapolate that information. And that's the key. And there is qualitative metrics as well, right? The credibility is key. The spaced repetition of the same testing. Sometimes application systems will give you the same different results every time you try the same test. So the spaced repetition of the same test to get the same results is extremely key. So those are your qualitative type of metrics that you can share and bring to your leadership and be able to convince them in terms of automating, using the automation tool.
Fantastic. Thank you both for that. Our last minute here, any final thoughts, closing advice that anyone would like to share with our audience before we shift to our next session?
I think
just from a SymTrain, we appreciate the partnership and looking forward to continuing the partnership. So thanks for the invitation. Enjoy the conversation and looking forward to solving a lot more problems in the future. Thanks, Raj.
Yeah, I think from the joint perspective, it's been a great partnership so far. Raj has been a very good partner to work with. the attention to focus, the attention to detail is much appreciated. It's been a great honor to be here to help represent you guys and our technology journey in terms of automation. And I look forward to Autonomic continuing to grow and doing bigger and better things.
Manjula, Sriram, and Scott Drake, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it.